Are you troubled by strange noises in the middle of the night? Do you experience feelings of dread in your attic or basement? Have you or a family member seen a spook, specter, or the 1984 classic film Ghostbusters? Well, then you've come to the right place because I am the ghost tourist, and this is New York City.
Where in the world are you hiding, my dear, my dear? I caught a glimpse of something very weird. A ghost I fear is near me, dear. A ghost has slipped into my world.
In this episode, we'll explore some of Ghostbusters' most iconic filming locations. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Ghostbusters is a cinematic love letter to New York, featuring some of the Big Apple's most iconic locations.
Though the film's ghouls and gozers are fictitious creations from the minds of Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, a number of the filming locations do have true ghostly legends associated with them. So let's go have a look. I'm here to believe you.
We'll begin with frame 1 of the film. Standing proudly between Fifth Avenue and Bryant Park, the New York Public Library's Midtown branch, often referred to as the Main Branch, is an architectural treasure and a historic New York City institution. Funded by John Jacob Astor, James Lennox, and Samuel Tilden, the building was officially dedicated on May 23, 1911.
Some fun facts. The Lions were nicknamed Patience and Fortitude during the Great Depression by Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia.
It is the second largest library in the country after the Smithsonian, with 125 miles of book stacks, mostly buried beneath your feet in subterranean tunnels.
And it is haunted. New York City is a palimpsest, a city of layers. Besides books, you know what else is buried beneath your feet? Bodies. Before this was Bryant Park, it was the Croton Reservoir. And before the reservoir, it was a potter's field, a place for the city to bury its disease-ridden and poor. And like most cities, they just buried right over that history and shoved the skeletons into the closet.
So it's no wonder there have been reports of paranormal activity within the library since its beginning. But the most fascinating account comes from a man who grew up inside the walls. So back in the day, if you were the superintendent of the library, you and your family got to live in a secret 7-room apartment inside the building.
Yes, please.
In a New York Times article dated from 1949, a man named John Fetteler described his childhood growing up in the library when his father was superintendent. I'll read you an excerpt. After 10 o'clock at night, when the green shaded lamps in the Central Public Library reading room are snapped off, a weird quiet settles over that cavernous chamber. Passing cars send ghostly light streaking up the high walls and across the great ceiling. A little boy's footsteps set up echoes, and the thinnest whisper returns as a phantom voice to the ear. John H. Ephraim Fetteler was telling what it was like to live in the vast library, as he did through most of his boyhood. How he trapped hundreds of pigeons on the library roof how he and his companions played at war in the library's sub-basement, and how they fled from the library's legendary red-bearded ghost. As the story goes, John recalled that his father told them that the library had cost 10 lives to build, and that the forlorn spirit who roamed the reading room by night was a construction worker who had fallen from the scaffolding when they were putting in the ceiling. However, later in life, John chalked the ghost story up to his father's creative attempt to keep him and his siblings out of the reading room. After all, good old Dad also told him that the night janitor was a cannibal who loved to eat children. Regardless, the legend of the red-bearded ghost persists to this day. I've got the compass out to see if we pick up any energy spikes. I am getting some really bizarre needle hits in this room. The library is open daily to visitors from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. with extended hours on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Hey, are you liking the video? Hit that subscribe button. Following the plot of the film, next we head uptown to Columbia University. Though there is no parapsychology department at Columbia University, one of its professors was a founding father of paranormal research. Meet James Hervey Hislop, a PhD psychologist and Columbia professor of logic and ethics in the 1890s. He was not a superstitious man. They say he was so devoted to fact and truth that he refused to even read novels. But he became a fervent believer in the afterlife by 1898, after an encounter with a spiritual medium from Boston, where, though in disguise and under a false identity, he communicated with his deceased father. He was one of the first Americans to connect psychology with psychic phenomena, and in 1906, he organized the American Society for Cyclical Research. The Institute's mission was to explore extraordinary and unexplained phenomena, both psychic or paranormal, and their implications for our understanding of consciousness, the universe, and the nature of existence. Hislop authored over a dozen books on the topic with a rather combative writing style. In Life After Death, he wrote, "I regard the existence of discarnate spirits as scientifically proved, and I no longer refer to the skeptic as having any right to speak on the subject. Any man who does not accept the existence of discarnate spirits and the proof of it is either ignorant or a moral coward. I give him short shrift and do not propose any longer to argue with him." Back off, man. He's a scientist. Both the library's main branch and Columbia University were well-known landmarks when Ghostbusters was released on June 8, 1984. But New York City's Ladder 8 was made famous by the franchise. Located on Varick and Northmore Streets in Tribeca, in a neighborhood Egon likened to a demilitarized zone. Today, the building is still an active firehouse, and Tribeca is now filled with trendy restaurants and million-dollar apartments. The firefighters say that hundreds of fans visit each day from around the world. If you're lucky enough to glimpse inside, the station is brimming with memorabilia. I'm sad to say, you won't find Slimer inside scarfing down hot dogs, but Ladder 8's history is fascinating and goes far beyond Ghostbusters. So, joining me today is my good friend and fellow film nerd, Brett Lambie.
Hey.
Hey! So Brett, why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of this firehouse?
Well, with roots dating back to the very first all-volunteer bucket brigades during the days of Dutch settlement, Hook and Ladder Company 8 was officially consolidated into the Metropolitan Fire Department in 1865.
The current company set up shop in this Beaux Arts building in 1903. The building actually used to be twice as wide, it had 2 bays, but when the city widened Varick Street, it left us with the iconic single engine that we have today. From their early horse-drawn rigs to ladders that climb high-rises, their spirit of serving the community lives on. Given their close proximity to the World Trade Center, Ladder 8 was one of the very first to respond on 9/11. And later, in 2006, during a renovation, they discovered a forgotten, sealed-off floor, containing journals and logbooks chronicling the company's busy and bloody past.
Tribeca isn't a demilitarized zone, but it was an industrial district, filled with many wooden warehouses that had a reputation for catching fire. In fact, the area around Houston Street used to be referred to as Hell's 100 Acres.
Oh, you know, I think I've covered one of those fires, the famous Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, in my NYU video that was 1911. And this is in that district, so this fire company would have responded to that fire. Check out the channel if you want to see it.
For you mega fans, every summer the Firehouse hosts a Ghostbusters Day. We're filming this in 2024, so this year is the 40th anniversary. The block party will be held on Saturday, June 8th. Hope to see you there. Following the film back uptown, this is 55 Central Park West. Dubbed Spook Central in the film, this parkside location was used as the exterior for Dana Barrett's apartment building.
I've always wondered how a cellist could afford a corner penthouse apartment on Central Park, but hey, it was the 80s.
Unfortunately, the building is not haunted in the slightest. Nor was it built by an eccentric Gozer-worshipping architect. This high-rise was designed by the architectural firm Schwartz & Gross in 1929, who were generally more into Art Deco than ancient Samaria. Today, 55 Central Park West belongs to a designated historic district and is a residential co-op. For apartments of the haunted variety, you may want to check out the Dakota just up the block, where they filmed Rosemary's Baby. Next, let's pop across the street to Central Park.
Central Park is a place to be wary of after dark, however, for more than one reason.
First, some basic facts. Central Park was designed by famed landscape architects Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux, and completed in 1876. It is the oldest public park in the country, and its 843 acres are visited annually by over 42 million people. As the New York Times once wrote, with some 63 miles of serpentine paths, Central Park is not for the city slickers trying to get somewhere. It's for those trying to get lost.
Besides ghosts, there have been reported sightings of aliens, a 3-foot-tall Bigfoot, and an alligator.
That last one turned out to be somewhat true. It was a South American caiman, which is actually a type of crocodile. It called the park home for over a week back in 2001. But we are here for ghosts. Perhaps it's no surprise that one of the most famous parks in the entire world also has a reputation for being one of the most haunted.
People have reported ghostly whispers, been stalked by threatening phantoms,
and there have been hundreds of eyewitness accounts of free-floating, full-torsoed, vaporous apparitions. If you find yourself wandering near the iconic reservoir in the wee hours of the dawn, keep your eyes peeled for an eerie phantom said to roam about the paths.
The phantom jogger is described as a translucent silhouette clad in old-school running attire. And if you listen closely, you may just hear their footsteps crunching softly upon the gravel.
Curiously, the phantom jogger is said to completely ignore the living, never making eye contact and occasionally running right through them.
Oh.
You know, I never realized the phantom jogger in the second movie is actually a real ghost until I was researching this episode. Yeah.
Belvedere Castle was opened to the public in 1872 as a Victorian folly, and today is one of the most beloved landmarks in Central Park, offering stunning panoramic views, and it also boasts the distinction of being the location from which Manhattan's daily temperature is measured.
However, if you visit after dark, perhaps to admire the stars on a warm spring evening, you may find yourself chilled to the bone.
Over the years, many have reported fleeting glimpses of a diaphanous young woman wandering the halls. Some believe she was a visitor who fell or jumped to her death from the castle's tower, though I could not find the information to substantiate that claim. And if vanishing lady ghosts are your thing, next make your way to Bethesda Fountain. According to witness accounts dating back over a century, there have been sporadic sightings of an elegant, mysterious lady who appears at dusk, only to vanish into thin air moments later. She is said to be dressed in a flowing, or by some accounts glowing, gown, and she's been spotted both gliding across the terrace or sitting stoically by the fountain, as if lost in thought. But the moment someone approaches her, she dissipates like a mirage. I love Central Park at twilight, especially in spring. It's like walking through a fairy tale. As the lamps begin to glow and the shadows deepen, the whole place feels more magic and wild and mysterious. We've made our way back towards the western edge of the park along 66th Street, right across from the Dana Barrett apartment building. This is Tavern on the Green. The restaurant has been featured in countless movies and TV shows, but I am biased, and I think Ghostbusters did it best.
There's not supposed to be any pets in the building!
The Tavern on the Green was originally a sheepfold, housing over 700 sheep, but Robert Moses converted it into the restaurant that you see today in 1934.
And banished the sheep to Brooklyn. It's now a fine dining establishment and a potential hotbed of paranormal activity. Many believe the tavern is overseen by its very first manager, who died in the building back in the 1930s. Employees have reported odd and unexplainable noises after closing, and occasionally the feeling of being watched by an unseen presence. I guess he was very devoted to his job.
Let me in!
The iconic Crystal Room featured in the film was built in 1976, but was decimated by the city in 2010 after the restaurant filed for bankruptcy. Thankfully, the historic Tavern reopened in 2014, and after a gut renovation, is now more evocative of the original 1930s structure. So it's about 9 o'clock now. As you can see, it's gotten fully dark, and we're walking across the park towards the southeastern corner. I don't think I would have dared to walk through Central Park back at night in the 1980s, though. There were a dozen murders each year, and hundreds of thefts and other violent crimes. And this violence has no doubt left an emotional imprint. But my absolute favorite ghosts are a pair of Victorian spinsters. As legend has it, the Vanderwort sisters lived beside Central Park in the 1800s. Their father was extremely overbearing, and the only place that Janet and Rosetta were allowed to visit unaccompanied was the pond across the street. So of course, the pond being their one freedom, that's where they were happiest, especially in winter when they could ice skate. As they grew in isolation, the sisters became so close that they spurned all potential suitors and remained together in their parkside home until 1880. And they died only months apart. But apparently, their love for ice skating has continued to this day, and no matter the season, if you're lucky and the wind's just right, you may catch a glimpse of the Vanderwort sisters in their Victorian bustle dresses, one in red and one in purple, their silver skates gliding above the pond in everlasting figure eights. Okay, now we're turning on the ghost cam for better night vision. So we're sitting here on the edge of the pond. It's the southeastern quadrant of the park, and just waiting to see if we see a pair of Victorian spinsters ice skating past us. We got the compass out. We'll see if we get any kind of a reading here. But Janet and Rosetta, if you're still here at the pond, we'd love to see you.
Come join us.
I can understand why this was your favorite place. It's absolutely beautiful. So the sisters both died in 1880, and I'm just sitting here sort of wondering how different the park must have looked back then. I don't think you were able to see any buildings at that point. Like,
it was all in black and white.
Yeah, it was in black and white, yes. The 1880s, no color in the world. We didn't witness any significant phenomena in the park, but tomorrow is a new day. So let's keep hunting. Luckily, today's weather forecast didn't call for fire and brimstone or 40 years of darkness. Welcome to New York City Hall. It was built way back in 1811, and it is the oldest city hall in continuous use in the United States of America. Located in Lower Manhattan, it's nestled in City Hall Park, between the base of the Brooklyn Bridge and Broadway. At the time of its construction, the clock in the Georgian Tower, built by Sperry & Company, was regarded as one of the most accurate timekeepers in the world. And the Statue of Justice crowning the building is also quite unique in having no blindfold.
You won't find Mayor Lenny inside, but you may encounter the spirit of former Mayor DeWitt Clinton, who famously championed both the Erie Canal and New York City's grid plan.
He reportedly likes to hang about his old office, the basement press room, and may occasionally cause problems with the elevators. Late-night employees claim the elevators often cease working at midnight for no discernible reason, causing one mechanic to quit in total frustration. Nearby, you'll also find the Tweed Courthouse. It was not featured in the film, but it is notoriously haunted. Find me on Patreon, where I include the extended story about the courthouse as bonus content. And since access to the rooftop of Spook Central is not possible for us, considering it was shot on a soundstage in California, I will instead cross the streams and take you to a climactic location from Ghostbusters 2. Prior to 1890, New York State immigration was located at Castle Garden in Battery Park. But a change in immigration law, plus massive political, religious, and economic upheaval in Europe, led to the establishment of a new station on Ellis Island. So, we're hopping on board a statue cruise and headed across the harbor to Ellis and Liberty Islands.
Ellis Island began receiving arrivals on January 1st, 1892. Over the 62-year course of its history, it saw 12 million men, women, and children pass through its doors.
Only 2% of the arriving immigrants were excluded from entry, and those with physical or mental health concerns were sent here to the Ellis Island Immigration Hospital.
And some of them never left.
Today, we're taking a hard hat tour of the abandoned buildings with a non-profit organization called Save Ellis Island. All proceeds go towards preserving these crumbling pieces of history. Thousands of unfortunate souls perished at the hospital, especially in times of epidemic. A disproportionate amount were children under the age of 13, and every death required an autopsy, which was a very unpopular law. However, the island hosted medical college students who would come to observe and learn. Suffice it to say, this place has a heavy vibe, and thousands upon thousands of witness reports detail phantom voices, unexplained noises, and paranormal encounters. The guide was hesitant to expand on the hauntings, but did remark that a ghost hunter from Connecticut had once told him that the spirits are happy not to be forgotten, and enjoy the attention paid to them by the visitors. If you're curious to learn more about Ellis Island and the fascinating history of the immigration hospital, find my extended video on the channel. And now for our final stop on the tour.
It's so crazy. It's really like non-stop helicopters swirling around out here.
I'm sorry, the helicopters are too loud. Please hold, I'm filming. Hey! I don't think they make Nikes in her size.
Hey,
How many of you out here are a national monument? Raise your hand, please. Oh, hello, miss.
But for the luckier 98% of immigrants who passed through the harbor, the Statue of Liberty symbolized hope and a promise of freedom. Originally pitched and designed by Frenchman Edouard de la Bellay, after a tremendous amount of fundraising and 2 decades of international teamwork, Lady Liberty was finally dedicated on October 28, 1886.
And it wasn't long before the locals began to whisper that the statue was possessed.
A fascinating New York Journal article from 1896 stated, "The Statue of Liberty is tenanted by ghosts." At least that is what the rivermen claim. They say that as the witching hour of night approaches, most unearthly noises are heard as if the statue were possessed. Many a folk yarn has been spun about the midnight carnival of spirits within the goddess. The writer goes on to explain that there is a scientific explanation for the loud racket. The statue is made of copper and bronze plates riveted together, and over time, due to exposure to the elements, the rivets loosen.
During the day, the sun causes the metal to expand.
And at night, the overlapping sections have a gentle contraction, almost as if she were drawing her robes more closely around her against the evening chill.
And the sound produces a pretty creepy groan that echoes through the hollow interior.
Here's another excerpt from that same article. Several watchmen had preferred to give up their positions rather than listen to these remarkable object lessons in acoustics. They could not be persuaded that the mysterious figure was not haunted, and all said that they had never in their lives heard of any haunted house which could boast half as many hair-raising noises as the dignified goddess. The sound of hollow groans, accompanied by weird rattlings and other uncanny noises, has frightened more than one superstitious sailor as he floated across the dark waters.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
If you want to help the channel grow, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter.
Thanks for watching this nostalgic, cinema-inspired episode, and thank you for putting up with my horrible impressions. And remember, if there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? If it's something strange in the neighborhood, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
I'm afraid of no ghosts.
I'm afraid of no ghosts.
A ghost has slipped into my soul.